I'm glad to have you here. Please follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. That way I can see how far my message has traveled. My name is Eleanor Rose Callahan. Most folks just call me Ellie. I'm 68 years old, and for the last 38 years, I've lived on 20 acres of rolling hillside in Napa Valley, California. We call it Rose Hill Vineyards, named after my maiden name and the gentle slope where our Chardonnay and Cabernet vines climb toward the sun. My late husband Tom and I bought this land in 1987 with every dime we had saved from his teaching salary and my nursing shifts. It was raw dirt back then, just scrub oak and wild grass. We planted the first vines ourselves, row by row, our hands blistered and our backs aching, dreaming of the day we'd make wine good enough to put our name on the bottle. Tom died 4 years ago, pancreatic cancer. Diagnosed in March, gone by September. One minute, he was out pruning the lower block, joking about how the deer were getting smarter than us, and the next, he was in a hospital bed, wasting away while I held his hand and promised him I'd keep the vineyard going. I scattered his ashes under the big valley oak at the top of the hill, the same tree where we'd had picnics when Grace was little, where Tom proposed to me the second time, the first time I'd said no because I was scared, and where I always knew I'd say goodbye to him. It's just me now. Me, the vines, the old stone farmhouse we built in 1992, the tasting room we added in 2005, and Maria, Ortiz, my vineyard manager and dearest friend who's been with us since Grace was 3. Maria's family works the rows with us every season. They're the heartbeat of this place. Grace is my only child, 36 now, a graphic designer in San Francisco, tall like her father with my dark curls and his blue eyes. She's smart, funny, kind, the kind of daughter who still calls her mom every Sunday night just to talk, or at least she used to. For years, I worried she'd never settle down. She'd date nice men, but nothing stuck. Then, 2 years ago, she met Lucas Harper. I remember the exact day she brought him home. Late September 2023, right in the middle of harvest. The air was thick with the smell of crushed grapes and fermenting juice. Grace pulled up in her white Jeep Wrangler, dust swirling behind her, and out stepped this man, tall, dark-haired, broad-shouldered, wearing a linen shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He carried a bottle of 2015 Bordeaux like it was an old friend, and smiled at me like he'd been waiting his whole life to meet me. "Mom," Grace said, her face glowing in a way I hadn't seen in years. "This is Lucas." He shook my hand, firm, warm, calloused just enough to suggest he'd worked with his hands at some point. "Mrs. Callahan," he said, voice smooth as aged Cabernet. "Grace has told me everything about Rose Hill. It's even more beautiful than she described." I liked him immediately. We walked the rows together that afternoon. He asked intelligent questions about soil drainage, canopy management, the differences between our hillside blocks and the valley floor. He tasted grapes right off the vine, closed his eyes and talked about acidity and tannin structure like he'd been raised in these hills. By dinner, he was helping Maria in the kitchen, laughing with Grace, calling me Ellie like we were already family. He told me he was 38. A certified sommelier who'd worked at Michelin-starred restaurants in New York and San Francisco. He'd recently left the corporate wine world to consult independently. "I want something real," he said, looking at Grace. "Something that lasts." 6 months later, they were engaged. 8 months after that, May 2024, they were married right here on the vineyard, under the big oak where Tom rests. It was everything I'd ever dreamed for my daughter. 300 guests, string lights woven through the trees, long farm tables covered in white linens, roses, and candles. Grace wore my mother's lace veil. Lucas looked at her like she was the only woman on earth. I walked her down the aisle myself, my arm trembling, tears blurring everything. I spent $120,000 I didn't really have. Took out a small equity line on the vineyard to cover it. But how many times do you marry off your only child? I never thought twice when they started asking for help after the honeymoon. It began small. "Mom," Grace said one Sunday over brunch on the back porch, "Lucas has this incredible opportunity. One of his old mentors is retiring and selling a small 10-acre label in Sonoma, amazing old vine fruit. If we could buy in as partners, we could bottle under the Rose Hill name and really grow. It's $80,000 for the down payment on the lease." I looked at Lucas. He was quiet, respectful, letting Grace lead. "Ellie, we wouldn't ask if we didn't believe in it. This could double your production in 5 years. We'd pay you back with interest. Make it official if you want." I wrote the check that week. It was most of my liquid savings, but this was their future, our future, the vineyard's future. 3 months later, it was the new crusher destemmer. The old one's 20 years old, Mom. We're losing fruit quality during processing. $28,000. Then the barrel room renovation. Temperature and humidity control is everything for aging, Ellie. This upgrade will protect your investment for decades. $45,000. Then the tasting room expansion. We're turning away tour groups left and right. A bigger space could add $100,000 in direct-to-consumer sales. $60,000. Then unexpected permitting delays on the Sonoma deal. The county's dragging their feet. We need bridge financing until the bank loan closes. $35,000. Then marketing. Then new French oak barrels. Then a reserve library release that needed upfront bottling costs. I kept saying yes, because Grace was happy, because Lucas was charming and knowledgeable and seemed to love the land as much as we did, because they were family now, because Tom and I had always dreamed of growing Rose Hill beyond what 2 people could manage alone, because I was lonely, and having them here, planning, dreaming, building, filled the house with life again. I didn't notice the pattern at first. I was too busy, too proud, too grateful for the noise and laughter. But little things started to nag at me. Grace stopped coming home as often without Lucas. When she did, she was quieter, checked her phone constantly. Lucas always had an answer for everything, smooth, rehearsed. Maria pulled me aside one afternoon in the barrel room. "Ellie, revenue is flat this year, but expenses are through the roof. Where's all this money going?" I told her about the investments, the Sonoma partnership, the upgrades. She didn't say anything, but her face— Maria has been with me 30 years. I knew that look. The real crack appeared last October during the 2025 harvest. I was in the cellar checking samples when my phone buzzed, a text from Grace. "Mom, change of plans for Thanksgiving. Lucas's parents invited us to Aspen for the week. You understand, right?" You understand. Not, "I hope you don't mind," not, "Is that okay?" Just, you understand. I stood there in the cool dark of the barrel room, surrounded by the smell of oak and new wine, and felt something inside me fracture. That night, I couldn't sleep. I got up at 3 a.m., made coffee, and sat at Tom's old desk in the study. Something made me open my laptop and log into the business accounts, the ones I'd added Lucas to as joint owner for convenience after the wedding. I scrolled through transactions. $8,200 to the Venetian Resort Las Vegas, marked Industry Conference. $12,500 to Tiffany & Company, San Francisco, marked Marketing Materials. $5,000 to Vintage Vault Storage in Las Vegas, 3 separate times. $18,000 to LH Consulting, Lucas Harper's personal account, multiple transfers. $9,800 to a high-end men's clothier in New York. My hands started shaking. I pulled up my personal accounts too, the equity line statements, the savings. Total in the last 18 months, $267,000, more than $250,000. And the Sonoma Vineyard partnership? I searched county records online. No transfer, no lease, no filing under Rose Hill, Harper, or any combination. Nothing. I sat back in Tom's chair and stared at the screen until the sun came up over the hills. The next morning, I called Patricia Delgado, my attorney in St. Helena. She'd handled Tom's estate, our trusts, Everything. I trusted her with my life. Patricia, I said when she answered, voice barely above a whisper, I think I've made a terrible mistake. She came to the house that afternoon. We sat on the back porch with iced tea and the vineyard stretching out below us. I showed her everything: bank statements, texts, the missing Sonoma records. She listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When she finished, she set down her pen. Ellie, this looks like financial exploitation, possibly fraud, but it's complicated because you authorized every transfer, and Lucas is legally your son-in-law. I know, I said, tears finally coming. But something's wrong. Grace isn't herself anymore. She barely talks to me unless Lucas is there. Nodded, slowly. We need to be very careful. If we confront them directly, Lucas could convince Grace you're confused or senile or trying to control her inheritance. Inheritance. The word landed like a stone in my stomach. Ellie, she said gently, how much is Rose Hill worth today, conservatively? I swallowed. Land values have gone crazy. With the vines, the brand, the tasting room, probably 3.5 million, maybe 4. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. That night, I found something else that turned my blood to ice. An old voicemail from Grace dated April 2025, 6 months ago. I'd been in the hospital with pneumonia and never listened to it. I pressed play. Mom, it's me. I need to talk to you about Lucas. There's something I found on his laptop when he was in the shower. Messages, a forum, something about vintage acceleration. It's bad, Mom. Please call me when you get this, and don't tell him I called. I'm scared. The message ended. I played it again and again. Why hadn't she followed up? What had she found? What had scared her silent? I didn't sleep for 3 days. The following week, I hired a private investigator, Mark Reynolds, retired SFPD detective, mid-50s, tall and quiet with kind eyes. Patricia recommended him. He specialized in financial crimes and elder exploitation. We met in Patricia's office in St. Helena. Mrs. Callahan, he said, shaking my hand, tell me everything, from the beginning. I did. When he finished, he nodded once. I'll need access to financial records, phone records if we can get them legally, social media, and I'll dig into Lucas Harper's background deep, discreetly. He charged a retainer I could barely afford, but I paid it without hesitation. 3 weeks later, he came back with a thick folder. We met again in Patricia's conference room, just the 3 of us. Mark opened the folder. Lucas Harper, born 1986, Chicago. Real name, Lucas Henry Moretti. Legal name change in 2015. The room tilted. Previous marriages? Patricia asked. 2 confirmed. He slid photos across the table. First wife, Claire Montgomery, married 2012 to 2014, daughter of a Seattle tech executive. Marriage ended shortly after Claire's father died and left her an $800,000 trust. Lucas received half in the divorce settlement. Claire later claimed coercion and undue influence, but no charges filed. Second photo. Second wife, Diane Whitmore, married 2017 to 2020, widow of a prominent Napa restaurateur, owned 3 commercial properties in St. Helena. After marriage, they took out substantial home equity loans totaling $600,000. Diane died in 2020, officially an accidental fall down cellar stairs after drinking, ruled accidental. Lucas inherited $400,000 life insurance payout. No charges. I couldn't breathe. Mark continued quietly. There's more. I found an online community, private, encrypted, invitation only. Mostly women, a few men. They share strategies for marrying into family-owned agricultural businesses, wineries, ranches, orchards. They have code names for victims. They call their method vintage acceleration. He turned his laptop toward us. Screenshots. User Sommelier81. New target acquired. Only child F, 36, widowed mother, 68, 20-acre premium Napa vineyard, estimated equity 3.5 M, wedding planned spring 2024, phase 1, attachment, complete. User Chardonnay Queen, beautiful. Mine took 14 months to get durable POA, push for joint accounts early. User Sommelier 81, already joint on all business and personal accounts, compliant and isolated. Total extracted 248K. Goal 600K plus equity line before exit. User Grace Rose Hill, Grace's account barely used. He's perfect. She loves him. I feel guilty sometimes. Vintage Victoria. Don't. These boomers didn't earn it. Their parents or husbands did. We're just accelerating the inevitable inheritance. Guilt is for amateurs. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Grace had posted only twice, both times expressing doubt. The rest was Lucas. Mark closed the laptop. There are 15 active members we've identified so far, 8 states, over $6 million documented extraction. They have a shared manual, 78 pages, target selection based on grief windows, only child dynamics, high-value family assets, step-by-step timelines, isolation tactics, gaslighting scripts, exit strategies. Patricia spoke first. This is organized fraud, potentially RICO if we can prove coordination across state lines. But Grace, my voice broke, she's part of it? No, Mark said firmly. Look at her activity. Minimal, conflicted. That voicemail, she was trying to warn you. Something or someone scared her into silence. I thought of my daughter, my sweet, sensitive daughter who cried at commercials with puppies, trapped, ashamed, terrified. What do we do? I whispered. We build an ironclad case, Patricia said, quietly. Document everything. Then we get Grace alone, away from him, and we get her to talk. The plan took 3 months. First, I stopped giving money, made excuses, cash flow tight after harvest, bank delays, consulting with my financial advisor. Lucas's texts shifted tone almost immediately. Ellie, we're counting on that next transfer for the new press. The vendor is holding it for us. Then, Grace is really upset about this delay. She was counting on your support. Then, this is disappointing. We may need to reconsider our partnership if you can't commit to growth. I held firm. It nearly killed me. Christmas 2024 came and went. They went to Aspen. Grace called Christmas Eve from the resort. Mom, Lucas's parents really want us here. You understand. Same words. Exact same words. My heart cracked wider. I said softly, I do, but I miss you, sweetheart. Long silence. Then, barely audible, I miss you too, Mom. Something in her voice. Fear, regret, a plea. I heard Lucas in the background. Baby, come on, the fire's going. The call ended. January 2025. I invited Grace for a girls' weekend in February. Just us, I wrote, like when you were little. Mani-pedis, wine tasting, sleeping in. Leave Lucas in the city. Tell him it's my early birthday gift. I turned 69 in March. I want my daughter to myself for once. She hesitated 3 days. Then, okay, I'll come. She arrived on a Friday evening in February, alone. No Lucas. We cooked together, Tom's favorite chicken marsala, walked the dormant vines at sunset, sat by the fireplace with a bottle of our 2018 Reserve Chardonnay and old photo albums. She was quiet at first, distant. On Saturday night, after 2 glasses of wine and hours of silence, she broke. We were on the couch, fire crackling, when she suddenly curled into me like she was 10 years old again. Mom, she whispered, voice breaking, I think I made a terrible mistake. I didn't push, just held her hand. The story came in pieces. How Lucas had found her on Hinge right after a painful breakup. How he'd researched Rose Hill before their first date, found Tom's obituary online, the vineyard's estimated value on real estate sites, my interviews in local wine magazines. How he'd love-bombed her. Flowers, weekend getaways, talk of forever within weeks. How he'd slowly, gently convinced her that borrowing from me was smart family business. Your mom wants this to succeed as much as we do. How she'd stumbled across the private forum on his laptop last April while he was in the shower. The messages, the manual, the celebration of successful extractions. I confronted him, she sobbed. He cried, said it was just dark humor, venting with old colleagues, that I was being paranoid because of my anxiety. He made me feel crazy. Then he'd turned cold, controlling, monitoring her phone, threatening to leave her with nothing if she ever questioned him again. He'd forged her signature on loan documents, opened credit cards in her name, told her if she left, he'd tell everyone she was mentally unstable, that she'd been stealing from me. She was trapped, ashamed, terrified to lose me, terrified to lose everything. I tried to warn you, she cried. That voicemail, I deleted it from my phone after, but I couldn't follow up. He was watching me. I was so scared. I held her while she sobbed until there were no tears left. The next morning, Sunday, we called Mark and Patricia. Grace gave them everything. Passwords, screenshots she'd secretly saved, voice recordings she'd made on her phone when Lucas thought she was asleep. He'd gotten arrogant, sloppy. There were recordings of him bragging after too much wine. Claire's dad never saw it coming, thought I was the perfect son-in-law. Diane actually changed her will before before the accident. Texts to other members. Napa target getting resistant. Mother asking too many questions. May need to accelerate isolation phase. Another. Considering durable power of attorney. Claim early dementia signs. Doctor shopping now. We had enough. Mark took it to the FBI. Agent Sarah Chen, white-collar crime unit out of Sacramento, met us at Patricia's office in March. She spread files across the table. This is bigger than Lucas Harper, she said. We've been watching this group for 18 months. They call themselves the Vintage Collective. 15 active members, 8 states, California, Oregon, Washington, Texas, Virginia, New York, Florida, and Michigan. Over $6.8 million documented extraction from family-owned agricultural properties. She looked at Grace. You're not the first spouse to wake up. You won't be the last, and you're brave as hell for coming forward. The plan was a controlled sting. Grace would go home to San Francisco, act normal, tell Lucas I was coming around, that I felt bad about the tension, that I was ready to transfer another $150,000 for critical new equipment to save the season. He'd get greedy. He'd talk. She'd wear a wire. The meeting would be neutral ground, a quiet cafe in Yountville on March 15th, my fake early birthday celebration. Bring your mom, Grace would say. Let's clear the air. Family meeting. March 15th, 2025. I arrived at Auberge Cafe in Yountville 20 minutes early. Ordered chamomile tea I didn't drink. My hands shook. The wire taped beneath my blouse felt enormous, obvious. Agent Chen had assured me it was invisible. Grace arrived next. Pale, beautiful, determined. She hugged me longer than usual. I love you, Mom, she whispered. I love you too, sweetheart. Lucas last, smiling that perfect smile, designer jacket, new watch I didn't recognize. He kissed my cheek. Ellie, thank you for suggesting this. Grace said you've reconsidered supporting the next phase? I played my part, tired, guilty, wanting peace. I have. I've been thinking a lot. I don't want money to come between us, between family. Grace squeezed my hand under the table. Lucas leaned forward, eyes bright. That's incredibly generous. We're looking at $150,000 to cover the new optical sorter and... I interrupted gently. Lucas, before we talk money, can I ask you something? He smiled indulgently. Of course. Why don't you tell me about Claire Montgomery? His smile froze. And Diane Whitmore? The color drained from his face. Grace spoke, voice steady. I know everything, Lucas. The forum, the manual, the others, vintage acceleration. He stood so fast his chair scraped loudly. This is absurd. You're both hysterical. Sit down, I said quietly. He looked around, saw the plainclothes agents at nearby tables, realized. His face twisted. You bitch, he spat at Grace. After everything Lucas Henry Moretti, Agent Chen said, standing with badge out, you're under arrest for wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, elder financial abuse, and racketeering. He bolted, made it 10 feet before 3 agents tackled him in the patio. Grace didn't watch. She buried her face in my shoulder and cried. The trial was held in federal court in San Francisco, United States v. Victoria Lang et al. 15 defendants, 14 women, 1 man, Lucas. I sat in the gallery every single day, Grace beside me, Maria on my other side. The courtroom was packed, media, other victims, families. Lucas wore expensive suits his lawyer provided, never looked at us. Victoria Lang, the ringleader, a 52-year-old former investment banker from Sonoma, sat at the head table like a CEO. The prosecution laid it out over 3 weeks. Bank records, wired transfers, the private forum archives seized from servers, the 78-page vintage acceleration manual, victim testimony, a rancher's son from Texas who'd been coerced into mortgaging family land, a widow from Virginia whose daughter-in-law had isolated her completely, a brother from Washington who'd lost his sister to the group and nearly his mother. Grace testified on day 9. She walked to the stand in a simple navy dress, head high. The prosecutor guided her gently through meeting Lucas, the love bombing, the slow realization, the fear. When the defense cross-examined, accusing her of being complicit, of spending the money freely, she didn't flinch. I was manipulated. I was ashamed. I was terrified. But I'm here now telling the truth. That's what matters. I cried silently in the gallery. I testified on day 12. They asked about every transfer, why I'd given the money, whether I'd intended it as gifts or loans, how it felt to learn the truth. When the defense lawyer, slick, expensive, aggressive, suggested I was a wealthy woman embarrassed by my own naivety, looking for someone to blame, I looked him in the eye. This isn't about the money, I said. It's about trust. My daughter's trust. My trust. Lucas didn't just take dollars, he took my child's faith in love. He took years we can never get back. He exploited my husband's death. He turned my grief into a weapon. The jury, 8 women, 4 men, watched me without expression, but some wiped tears. Closing arguments. The prosecutor held up the manual. This is not a love story gone wrong. This is organized crime with grapes instead of guns. These defendants targeted grieving families. They had timelines, code names, celebration threads when they hit milestones. They destroyed lives for profit. The defense claimed misunderstandings, bad relationships, overzealous prosecution. The jury deliberated 4 days. Guilty. All 15. All counts. Victoria Lang, 24 years. Lucas Harper, 15 years. The others, 8 to 18 years. When the foreman read guilty for Lucas, Grace reached for my hand. We didn't cheer. We just held on. Sentencing was in July. I read my victim impact statement. I talked about Tom, about watching my daughter disappear into fear, about waking up every day wondering if I'd lost her forever, about the money, yes, the money, but how it was nothing compared to the trust. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, looked at Lucas for a long moment. Mr. Harper, you preyed on a grieving family. You exploited love, grief, and generosity. You showed no remorse. I sentence you to 15 years in federal prison. He finally looked at us then. Pure hatred. Grace didn't look away. December 24th, 2025. Christmas Eve. I'm sitting on the front porch of the farmhouse, wrapped in a blanket, watching the first real fog of winter roll in over the vines. The hills are bare now, sleeping under frost, waiting for spring. Grace lives here again, moved back in August, divorced in September. She works with Maria every day, learning pruning, canopy management, winemaking from the ground up. Really learning this time, not just dreaming. We recovered $178,000 from seized accounts. I donated half to an elder financial abuse nonprofit, used the rest to repair the tasting room roof and replace the old tractor. Grace is in therapy twice a week. So am I. We talk every evening on the porch with tea or wine about everything: the guilt, the shame, the anger, the healing. Last month, she started paying me back $500 a month from her salary, with a note, "First of many. I love you, Mom." I cried when I got it, not because I need the money, because it means she's taking responsibility, because it means she's coming back to herself. Tonight, Maria and her family are coming over. Her husband, Luis, their 3 kids, her mother. We're making Tom's prime rib and Yorkshire pudding. The tree is up. Lights twinkling, ornaments from Grace's childhood dangling, presents underneath. One big one from Grace to me, a large framed photo. It's the 3 of us, me, Tom, and 8-year-old Grace standing in the vines the day we bottled our first vintage in 1998. On the back, in Grace's handwriting, "To the strongest, most loving woman I know, thank you for fighting for me. Thank you for never giving up. I love you forever. Grace." I keep it on the mantle, where I can see it every day. The fog is thick now, but I know what's out there. 20 acres of vines, sleeping, waiting. They get pruned hard every winter, cut back almost to nothing, but every spring they come back, stronger, greener, full of life, just like us. My name is Eleanor Rose Callahan. This is my vineyard. This is my daughter. This is our life, and no one will ever take it from us again.